On one still night, the moon split into two halves above the desert, and every man in Makkah froze. Look toward the mountain. The moon has been torn into halves, and the sky itself is bearing witness tonight. This was not the only sign. Water once poured from his fingers, while thirsty armies watched in stunned silence. This man is only a sorcerer, yet tell me which sorcerer can make a dry palm trunk weep aloud. 10 of these events were recorded by companions who witnessed them, preserved in the most authentic books of Hadith. Stay with me, because the 10th miracle is still standing before your eyes today, and most people never notice. Before we start, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments below. If you've already done, let's begin the journey. Before the first of these 10 signs appeared, Arabia was a land of burning sand and endless silent stars. Caravans crossed those wastelands for months, guided only by the stars, carrying dates, leather, cloth, and whispered desert news. The people of Makkah lived beside a sacred stone house raised long ago by Ibrahim and his son Ismail. Around that pure house, they had placed 360 idols carved from wood, stone, and precious agate. Every tribe brought its own god, and every god demanded blood, offerings, and the obedience of frightened human hearts. Baby girls were buried alive in that sand, and the fathers who buried them were praised as strong men. The Quran itself would later ask for what crime that murdered infant girl was killed, and all of Arabia trembled. Into that darkness, a child was born in the year an elephant army marched against that sacred house itself. He grew as an orphan, quiet, honest, and known throughout the valley as the trustworthy one before any revelation. Even his enemies stored their gold and jewelry with him because no other man in Makkah could be trusted. Then, at 40 years of age, inside a cave upon a black mountain, everything about his life changed forever. An angel commanded him to read, and the words that followed would reshape history for the next 14 centuries. From that night onward, the greatest miracle of his life was never fire, never gold, never any earthly wonder. The greatest sign given to him was a book recited by an unlettered man, unmatched by all of Arabia. Those Arabs were the finest poets on earth, and poetry to them was sharper than any sword in battle. They hung their greatest poems upon the walls of the sacred house, so every visiting caravan would admire them. Yet when this book was recited, their greatest masters of language stood silent, pale, and strangely deeply disturbed. The Quran challenged them openly to produce even a single chapter like it, and not one man ever succeeded. That very challenge still stands today unanswered, across 1400 years, in every language, in every land, without exception. But the Quran was only the first of the signs, and the others were seen with ordinary human eyes. Scholars call these events mujizat, meaning things that leave the human mind completely helpless and utterly unable to imitate. A miracle is not magic, because magic is trickery, while a miracle is Allah Himself suspending His own creation. Every prophet was given signs, matching the pride of his people, and this pattern repeats throughout all Quranic history. Egypt worshipped magicians, so Musa was given a staff that swallowed every rope and serpent thrown down before Pharaoh. The people of Isa worshipped medicine, so he healed the blind and the lepers by the permission of Allah. The Arabs worshipped words, so the final prophet was given words that no human tongue could ever truly match. Yet Allah did not stop there, and physical signs followed him through valleys, battlefields, marketplaces, and crowded desert nights. Thousands of companions witnessed these events, and hundreds of them later narrated exactly what their own eyes had witnessed. Those narrations were collected, examined, and tested by scholars who spent their entire lifetimes verifying every single narrator and chain. They traveled for months on camelback simply to confirm one sentence from one man before ever writing it down. Because of that effort, we can still separate what truly happened from what later storytellers invented and wildly exaggerated. Everything you are about to hear comes from those verified collections, especially Bukhari, Muslim, and other trusted early books. Nothing here is folklore, nothing here is legend, and nothing here depends on your imagination to feel genuinely powerful. 10 signs are waiting, and each one struck the people of that time like lightning across an empty sky. Some happened before crowds of hungry men, some before armies, and some before only a single frightened companion alone. One of them involved a tree trunk that cried like a child until the Prophet walked down and embraced it. Another involved a small amount of food that fed an entire army during the darkest hour of a siege. Another involved the moon itself, torn apart above the mountains, while the disbelievers stood staring upward in complete horror. But before any of them happened, one thing had to break inside the proud hearts of the Meccan leaders. They demanded a sign with their own mouths, and what the sky gave them that night changed everything forever. The leaders of Makkah gathered near the sacred house one evening, their faces hard, their patience finally worn completely away. They had mocked him for years, calling him a poet, a madman, a magician, and a shameless liar before everyone. Now they wanted proof, something enormous, something the entire valley could see, something no human hand could ever produce. So they demanded that he split the moon itself, believing such a request was safely impossible for any man. It was the night of a full moon, hanging low and impossibly bright above the black mountains of Makkah. The Prophet stood beneath that sky, silent, while the men around him waited with folded arms and mocking smiles. Then, as Anas ibn Malik later narrated in Sahih Bukhari, the moon was split apart into 2 clear halves. One half stood above one mountain, and the other half stood clearly above the mountain on the opposite side. Ibn Mas'ud reported the same event, saying the mountain of Hira appeared distinctly between the 2 halves that night. Imagine standing in that valley, looking upward, and watching the greatest lamp of the night break into 2 pieces. The laughter died instantly, and a heavy silence fell over Makkah that no living poet could ever describe properly. The Prophet simply told them to witness it, and the Quran itself recorded that stunning moment forever in Surah Al-Qamar. Allah declared that the hour has drawn near and the moon has split, yet they turned away, still rejecting. The very next verse says that whenever they see a sign, they turn away and call it passing magic. And that is exactly what happened, because the proud men of Makkah called it merely enchantment of their eyes. They said travelers arriving from distant lands would confirm nothing, so they waited eagerly for the incoming desert caravans. When those travelers arrived, they described seeing the same strange splitting of the moon on that very same night. Still, the leaders refused, proving that hearts do not reject truth because of evidence, but purely because of pride. That single lesson would repeat itself again and again through every miracle that followed in the coming difficult years. The second great sign came not from the sky, but from the fingers of one utterly exhausted, thirsty man. At Hudaybiyah, 1,400 companions camped beside a shallow well that had almost completely dried into cracked, useless mud. The sun burned above them. The animals were failing, and men were pressing their tongues against dry leather bags. Jabir ibn Abdullah narrated in Sahih Bukhari that the Prophet placed his blessed hand inside that empty, dying well. Water began rising between his fingers like springs, gushing upward until the entire army drank freely without any restriction. They drank deeply, filled their water skins, and watered every animal until nobody in that entire valley remained thirsty. Jabir later said that even 100,000 men would have drunk enough from that endlessly flowing water there. Think carefully about what that means, because water does not come from human flesh under any known natural law. This happened not once, but on several separate occasions, recorded by different companions during different long, desperate desert journeys. The third sign appeared during the digging of the trench, when Medina was starving and surrounded by advancing enemies. 10,000 soldiers were marching toward the city, while the Muslims dug a long ditch in bitter, freezing weather. Hunger was so severe that the companions tied flat stones against their stomachs to dull the constant burning pain. Jabir saw the Prophet's condition, went home quietly, and prepared a small meal from one young lamb and barley. It was food barely enough for a small handful of men, perhaps 10 at the very most, sitting closely together. He invited the Prophet privately, but the Prophet called every single hungry worker digging along that entire long trench. Around 1,000 men came walking toward that tiny pot, and Jabir's heart nearly stopped from pure embarrassment and fear. The Prophet blessed the dough and the meat, then ordered the food served in groups without lifting the pot. Group after group entered, ate fully and left satisfied, while the pot kept bubbling still, as though completely untouched. When the very last man finished eating, the food still remained, and Jabir stood staring in complete silent disbelief. This narration is preserved in Bukhari and Muslim, witnessed by hundreds of men who ate from that impossible meal. Yet the strangest sign of all was still coming, and it involved neither food nor water nor the sky. Inside the mosque of Medina stood a dry palm trunk, where the Prophet leaned while delivering his weekly sermons. For years, that rough trunk carried his weight as he spoke about paradise, patience, mercy, and the coming judgment. Then the companions built a proper wooden pulpit so the growing crowds could finally see and hear him clearly. On the first day he climbed that new pulpit, something happened that no gathering of humans had ever witnessed. The abandoned palm trunk began crying aloud, a deep sobbing sound echoing through the entire mosque before everyone present. Jabir ibn Abdullah described it in Sahih Bukhari as the weeping of a small child, desperate for warmth and comfort. The companions froze in place, hardened warriors among them, listening to dead wood, mourning the loss of his touch. The Prophet stepped down from the pulpit, walked toward that trunk, and embraced it exactly like a grieving father. Only then did the crying slowly fade, softening gradually the way an infant quiets against a loving parent's chest. Hassan al-Basri later wept over this narration, saying wood longed for him while human hearts remain strangely cold today. That trunk was eventually buried beneath the pulpit, and this event is recorded across multiple authentic chains of narration. The fifth sign happened in the open desert, where stones themselves loudly testified to what human tongues kept stubbornly denying. Abu Dar narrated that pebbles placed in the Prophet's hand began glorifying Allah with a clear, audible humming sound. The men present heard it plainly, a sound like bees rising from small lifeless stones resting in his palm. Scholars discuss the strength of some chains here, yet several early narrations affirm this remarkable event through respected companions. The Quran itself declares that everything in the heavens and earth glorifies Allah, though most humans cannot understand it. For a brief moment in that desert, the veil lifted, and human ears heard what all creation constantly says. The sixth sign came on a battlefield, in a moment of pain, blood, dust, and terrifying, overwhelming military pressure. At Khaybar, the Muslim army faced towering fortresses, and the banner was promised to a man beloved by Allah. That man was Ali ibn Abi Talib, but his eyes were swollen shut from a severe and painful infection. He could not even see the ground beneath him, yet he was called forward before the entire waiting army. The Prophet applied his blessed saliva to those damaged eyes and prayed quietly for his young cousin's complete recovery. Ali later said that he never suffered from eye pain again during all the remaining years of his life. This narration appears in Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, witnessed by an entire army standing in that open valley. The seventh sign happened after that same battle, and it nearly ended the prophet's life through carefully hidden poison. A roasted sheep was presented to him as a gift, prepared quietly by a woman seeking bitter personal revenge. She had poisoned the meat thoroughly, concentrating the deadliest portion inside the shoulder, which she knew he preferred most. He took one bite, then immediately stopped, announcing that the shoulder of this animal was informing him of poison. The meat itself had spoken, warning him, and this event is recorded in Bukhari through the companion Abu Huraira. One companion who had already swallowed his portion died shortly afterward, proving that the poison was terrifyingly real indeed. The woman was brought forward and confessed openly, admitting she wanted to test whether he was truly a prophet. Her plan proved the opposite of what she intended, because no ordinary man survives a carefully prepared secret assassination. Yet none of these 7 signs matched the 8th, which unfolded during one single unforgettable night above sleeping Makkah. That year he had lost his wife Khadija and his uncle, and his heart was heavy with crushing grief. The people of Taif had stoned him until blood filled his sandals, and Makkah had rejected him almost completely. Then, on the darkest night of his mission, he was taken on a journey no human had ever taken. Surah Al-Isra opens by declaring glory to the one who took his servant by night from the sacred mosque. He traveled from Makkah to the farthest mosque in Jerusalem, then ascended upward beyond the 7 great heavens themselves. He led every previous prophet in prayer there, then met Adam, Yahya, Isa, Yusuf, Idris, Harun, Musa, and Ibrahim. He returned before morning, and when Makkah heard his account, the greatest test of belief in that city instantly began. By sunrise, the story had spread through every narrow street, every marketplace, and every crowded courtyard in that valley. The leaders of Makkah could hardly contain their delight, believing this claim would finally destroy his reputation completely, forever. Merchants who traveled that route knew it took a full month of hard riding to reach Jerusalem and return. Now this man was claiming he had gone there and come back before the coldness of his bed disappeared. They ran toward Abu Bakr, certain that even his closest friend would abandon him after hearing something so impossible. They told him everything, expecting laughter, expecting doubt, expecting the collapse of the strongest supporter that movement ever had. Abu Bakr replied that if the Prophet said it, then it was true, without hesitation and without any condition. He explained that he already believed news coming from the heavens themselves, so a night journey was hardly harder. From that morning onward, he was called As-Siddiq, the truthful one, a title that history has never taken away. That single response revealed something deeper than any miracle, because faith is not built upon spectacle, but upon trust. Still, the leaders pressed forward, demanding that the Prophet describe Jerusalem in complete detail before the entire watching crowd. Most of them had visited that city, and they knew its gates, its walls, and its distinctive ancient architecture. He began describing the sacred mosque exactly, and the men listening slowly lost the confidence that had filled them. Every detail matched, every description was accurate, and those who had traveled there confirmed his words with visible discomfort. He also described a caravan approaching Makkah, naming its details and predicting the exact day it would finally arrive. The caravan arrived precisely as described, and still most of them refused, because pride had already sealed their hearts. That is the tragedy hidden inside every one of these signs, and it repeats through every nation in history. Pharaoh saw the sea split apart and still drowned inside it while chasing the very sign he had witnessed. The people of Thamud saw the she-camel of Salih emerge miraculously and slaughtered her within a few short days. Signs never create faith by themselves, because a heart that refuses truth will always find another convenient explanation. The 9th sign was different, because it was not shown to enemies, but experienced quietly by exhausted, loyal followers. The Prophet was repeatedly given knowledge of future events, and those events unfolded exactly as he had described them. He told his companions that this religion would spread until a rider travels safely from Sana to Hadramaut alone. He said that treasures of Persia and Rome would be opened and spent in the path of Allah eventually. Surah ibn Malik chased him during the migration, hoping for a reward, and his horse sank into the sand. The Prophet told him that he would one day wear the golden bracelets of the Persian Emperor Khosrow himself. Years later, during the Caliphate of Umar, those very bracelets arrived in Medina after the Persian Empire finally collapsed. Umar called Surah forward, placed those bracelets upon his arms, and the entire gathering remembered the desert prophecy instantly. That moment reduced grown men to tears because they were watching prophecy become physical gold in front of them. He also foretold the martyrdom of certain companions, the fall of specific cities, and the trials of later generations. These reports are preserved across Bukhari, Muslim, and other reliable collections narrated by men who lived those exact outcomes. Yet, knowledge of the unseen belongs only to Allah, and the Prophet never claimed it as his own power. He always emphasized that whatever he knew was taught to him, given by revelation, never generated by his own soul. That humility is precisely what separates a true prophet from every fortune teller who ever deceived a desperate crowd. When he passed away, Medina collapsed into grief so heavy that strong companions could not stand or speak properly. Umar refused to believe it, standing with his sword, declaring that anyone claiming his death would be severely punished. Abu Bakr entered quietly, uncovered his face, wept over him, then walked outside and addressed the shattered, trembling crowd. He reminded them that whoever worshipped Muhammad should know he has died, but Allah is living and never dies. Then he recited the verse declaring that Muhammad is only a messenger, and messengers have certainly passed away before him. The crowd fell silent, as though hearing that verse for the very first time in their entire believing lives. But one final miracle remained, and unlike the other 9, it never ended and still reaches you this moment. The moon healed itself, the well eventually dried, and the armies who witnessed those signs were buried centuries ago. Every physical miracle ended, because miracles are meant for the eyes of the people who stand there quietly watching. But one miracle was never sealed inside its own century, and it is sitting in your home right now. The 10th miracle is the Quran, the only sign from that era still speaking to living human beings today. It was revealed across 23 years, in pieces, during battles, migrations, hunger, grief, and moments of quiet joy. Yet when those scattered pieces were gathered, they formed one book without a single contradiction, hiding anywhere inside it. Allah asks within Surah An-Nisa whether they truly reflect upon the Quran and find no contradiction anywhere inside it. Had it come from anyone besides Allah, the verse says, they would have found much contradiction scattered throughout it. The man who delivered it could neither read nor write, and his own people knew that simple fact intimately. They watched him grow among them for 40 years and never once heard poetry or scripture from his mouth. Then suddenly, words arrived that silenced the greatest poets of Arabia and reshaped the language they had mastered completely. Early narrations record that a fierce enemy of Islam admitted these words carried an unusual sweetness, beauty, and power. He confessed it was not poetry, not sorcery, not the speech of soothsayers, yet he still openly rejected everything. That is the same struggle happening inside millions of hearts today, in modern cities of glass, steel, and light. We are not waiting for the moon to split, because our problem was never truly a shortage of evidence. Our problem is that we hold the greatest miracle in our hands and we open it only during funerals. The companions did not follow him because of splitting moons, but because of what those verses did inside them. Umar ibn al-Khattab walked toward that house carrying a sword, intending to end the life of the final prophet. He heard verses from Surah Taha in his sister's home, and that sword became completely useless in his hand. The man who came to kill walked out that morning as a believer and later became a great caliph. No moon split that day, no water flowed from fingers, and no palm trunk wept inside any nearby mosque. Only words were recited, and those words reached a place that swords, threats, and armies could never possibly reach. That same book is still available to you, unchanged, in the original language, exactly as it was first revealed. Millions of children across Africa, Asia, Europe, and America have memorized every letter of it from beginning to end. No other book in human history has been preserved inside living human chests across 14 continuous and unbroken centuries. Allah promised in Surah Al-Hijr that He sent down the reminder and He alone will certainly guard it forever. 14 centuries later, that promise is still standing, visible to anyone honest enough to examine the entire historical record. So the question tonight is not whether these miracles happened, because reliable narrators recorded them with extraordinary careful precision. The real question is what these signs are supposed to change inside the person who just heard about them. A dry palm trunk wept simply because it missed His closeness, though it had no eyes and no heart. Meanwhile, we carry His teachings, His sunnah, and His book, and often feel almost nothing at all inside us. That gap between wood and human hearts is the quiet warning hidden inside this entire, remarkable ancient story tonight. Faith is not proven by wonders in the sky, but by what you do when nobody at all is watching. It is proven in the darkness before dawn, when the whole city sleeps and you quietly rise for prayer. It is proven when the money is easy but forbidden, and you quietly walk away with empty, patient hands. It is proven when your heart is breaking and you still whisper that Allah alone knows what is best. The people of Makkah demanded a sign, received it, and still chose their idols over their own honest eyes. Our idols today are smaller, quieter, and far more comfortable, sitting in our pockets and glowing every single night. So tonight, before sleeping, open that book, read even one page, and let the 10th miracle finally reach you. The moon returned to normal that ancient night, but a heart truly touched by these words never returns unchanged.